you will never find the difficulty, because the previously trained sector in terms of credit had certain problems. If you select the right customer, you have the right answer. So reaching out to them in terms of technology, bridging them, educating them while giving them the loans, their incomes, their budgeting programs has come up very strong. And now Easy Paisa is available to each home. So I would say that's what the future is, that when every man in the house can get an Easy Paisa access, he or she can have an account while sitting home. So that is the basis of the financial usage and education, which will definitely contribute to the poverty alleviation. Because this subject, shikwa, jawab shikwa, and poverty will never finish. But the concrete step taken is one of the things is the microfinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think you'll probably all agree that everybody needs to have some kind of a credit base and a credit history, and banking the unbanked is something that's very important, because something like, I think, 5% of Pakistan is banked, the rest aren't, and it's quite a shocking figure. Continuing on in the theme of microfinance, and is Mr. Ghazanfar Azam, CEO, TCS Bank Financial Services Project.
Assalamu alaikum. Generally, when people talk about microfinance, especially in our country, I think the impression is that it's all about lending to poor people. I would like to make a little clarification here that microfinance is not just about lending. Microfinance means all financial services that you and I need. These needs are there at the lowest level of the population. If I need a savings account and you need a savings account, all people need to have access to where they can put in their little savings. If you and I need loans for buying homes or constructing homes, people at the smallest level even need more urgently, because they can't afford housing from their own sources. If you and I need insurance products, life insurance and health insurance, this need at the lowest level is even more acute. So it's all about financial services. Microfinance does not mean just lending to poor people. The second clarification that I would like to make is that in our country, I mean, if you look at the overall landscape, as opposed to developed countries where one of the development indicators is that almost 90% plus population has some kind of financial facility, which includes basic savings accounts and some borrowing facilities, credit cards and personal loans and other loans. As opposed to that, Tammy just mentioned that coverage is perhaps 5% here in Pakistan. In terms of savings, it's a little more, but in terms of borrowing facilities, it's pathetic. In a population of 180 million, there are only 500,000 business borrowers in the country. And there are 40 plus banks. I mean, I don't want to criticize banks because I spent almost 20 years in banking sector as myself. But the fact is that there are about 2 million agricultural borrowers. There are about 2 million consumer borrowers, credit cards and others. And there are 500,000 business borrowers in the 6th largest country in the world in terms of population. So that explains why our economic development level is so low. So microfinance, in its broader perspective, is a movement, basically, to take financial services to the lowest level. Now, within microfinance, you will see different points of view and different schools of thought, and they're represented over here also. Saqib Saab will be sharing with you a very different perspective, a very valid one, and he has done, mashallah, a lot of work. Mohar Saab presents Tamir Microfinance Bank, which is leading a great initiative, Easy Paisa, and so my other colleagues. Within microfinance, as I said, I mean, there is a thought that it's all about poverty alleviation. It's about well-off people contributing towards pooling funds to make them available to the lowest level, poor people, so that they could change their conditions. But there is another very strong voice, and then that's a global voice, and that says that you can't change economies and entire societies just by donations and grants, and therefore commercial funding needs to come in. So I represent a point of view. I was a CEO at Kash Microfinance Bank, which was a new institution created in 2008. And I'm leading again a project which aims at bringing in commercial investment, that it's commercially viable to create institutions, products, and services that can actually provide, they fill this gap that commercial banks, for their own reasons, do not want to fill in, that commercial investment can actually transform the financial services landscape. And it is commercially viable, it can generate decent return to investors, at the same time, it can provide those financial services without which a society cannot really make much progress.
Thank you. Financial services are huge because they include, they have other spin-offs as well. You have micro-insurance and things like that as well. But what's interesting is that in Pakistan, you find that people do borrow a lot. They're just not part of the records, I guess, because it's in the informal sector for money lenders, where they pay 300% and 400%, and so their debts are never paid off, and they carry them for years. So commercial borrowings or borrowing at commercial rates makes perfect sense. And I think we have to move out of the whole thing that microfinance is some kind of charity. You have to look at it as a business. So, you know, microfinance, its key targets are the rural areas, and our next two speakers are really going to talk about interventions in the rural areas. So I'd like Dr. Amjad Saqib, Executive Director of Akhuwat Foundation, to let us know what he has to say.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much. With all respect at my command from my previous distinguished speakers, I have a different kind of a story to tell you. Microfinance, as we all know, is the provision of financial services to the poor. These services include credit, savings, leasing, and insurance. Goals of poverty alleviation are tied to microfinance for 6 reasons. Number 1 is the provision of access to funding to the economically marginalized. Number 2, it encourages self-sufficiency and entrepreneurship. Instead of becoming dependent on charity and alms, people get an opportunity to test their potential and skills. Number 3, it manages risks by creating safety nets. Number 4, economic development of community by rotation of money within society. Number 5, women empowerment. And number 6, microfinance leads to social development as well. However, in recent years, there has been a drastic paradigm shift in the microfinance movement. Microfinance institutions are now seen as business ventures. Such a treatment of microfinance has led the movement to grow, but one must be reminded that growth is not merely expansion. Development in true sense of the term, however, refers to change. Thus, in recent years, microfinance, as I mentioned, has become to be seen as a mode of an economic process or a business venture than a tool for poverty alleviation. This is not to suggest that microfinance has not been successful or that it has become redundant. In fact, given the fact that 1/3 of world's population still lives below the poverty line, the need for microfinance is glaringly evident. But according to our understanding, microfinance should not be treated as a mere business activity. It should be seen as a responsibility towards the poor of society. Sustainability of an organization is also a very important concern for microfinance organizations. Sustainability usually refers to the ability of the organization to endure, and conventionally this is achieved through recovery of costs and creation of some additional funds that allow the organization to grow. This concern for endurance, for survival, is translated into charging higher interest rates on loans, which eventually undermine the primary motive of microfinance, that is poverty alleviation. The need for organizational sustainability